Bug Implementer.
Welcome back to the daily practice sessions where we learn how to code and learn Godot through repetition and tiny tasks and actually do stuff, do exercises, and yeah, let's dive right into the today's exercise. Let's create a new scene with the root node of type node, and I'm going to add two nodes to it, two child nodes, a sprite 2D node and a label node. I'm going to add a script to the sprite 2D node, and I'm going to write the ready function. So in the last session we learned how to print out properties of nodes. We learned that there is the inspector on the right, and if we click a node here in the scene tree, we can inspect properties of this node. Let's inspect, for example, the position property, and we learned that we can print them out. The first line of the tooltip is important. So we have a property with the name position, and it's of type vector2, and the default value is the gray text vector2 0 0. So in order to print this out and show it in the output of our console, we need to refer to exactly the name that is presented here in this first line after the word property, so lowercase position. Let's write this down and let's print it out. Print, do the brackets, and we play the current scene, not the project. We do not run the project, we run the current scene. I always use the shortcut for this. And we see our value. Right now our sprite 2D node has no texture, so let's fix that and quick load the Godot icon to it. So now we can actually see something. And I'm going to drag it into the middle of this viewport rectangle right here, which represents exactly the game's viewport. So now we have it somewhat in the middle, and now we can check this. Yeah, our output, if we play it, is exactly what we have here in the inspector. So now this is what we have learned. So today we want to actually change those node properties. How can we do this? Let's figure it out. I will show you. We write the property we want to change. In this case, for example, the position property. We just write it inside of our ready function. Then we use the equal sign. And then we need a value we want to override this property with. So this property, position, needs a value of vector2. And we even can see the grayed out text, vector2 0 0. So let's copy that for now. We need to write vector2, and let's make it 0 0, save it. In the editor, we have put the sprite 2D node in the middle of this viewport rect, and if we hit play now, we see it is resetted to the 0 0 position. Because now the ready function is executed once at the beginning of the game, and at the beginning of our game we immediately set the position, the property position, to vector 0 0. And if we watch closely and check this out, we grab this node and let's drag it to the 0 0 point, or better, you hit this little arrow so you can reset it. So the 0 0 position is indeed the top left corner of our viewport. So this is what we do in the code. We write, please set this to 0 0, to x position 0, to y position 0 immediately when at the start of the game. So let's analyze this a little bit further. So if we drag it to the right, the x value increases, and if we drag it to the left, the x value decreases. So small x values are more to the left, bigger x values are more to the right of our viewport. The same is holds true for y. Small values are more on the top of our viewport and big values are more on the bottom of our viewport. So if we want to place it with our code here in the somewhat bottom down right corner, we can use a value that is big, like 1000 for example. And for y, the values where we can check this again, let's see, the value goes to 650-ish, something like that. And so let's take 500. And in the editor, let's reset this. And now let's play it. And indeed, it shows and it appears in the down right corner, because we, at the start of the game, this is what the ready function does. It is executed once at the start of the game. We override, by using this equal sign, the position property, the value of the position property, to be vector 2, 1000, and this is the x component of this vector, as we can see right here, x and y. So we override the x value of this position property to be 1000 and the y value of this vector 2 property to be 500. Yeah, and this is how we can override the position property. So in the editor, it is still 0, 0, because this is how the game actually starts. And when we hit this button and the ready function is fired, it immediately gets overwritten, and now it is at this new position we have specified in our code. Now let's go through this with another property, because we have different value types, as you can remember from yesterday. So now let's check out rotation. In order to know that we can use rotation, we read the first line, property of name rotation. Okay, perfect for now. So I can refer to it by typing rotation. And I want to override the rotation property. And now I need to know, but what value type should go into the rotation property? Let's see. In this case, it's a float, a value of type float. And we can even see the initial value, which is 0.0. So float meaning a floating point number. So let's check this out. Let's make it 0.2, for example, and play the scene. And we can see our sprite is now slightly tilted to the right. This is because we have overwritten the rotation property, and we even can check it out in the editor. And no matter what we specify in this editor right now, we can do it like this. At the beginning of the game now, all the time the code wins and the editor loses, because we have specified and overwritten the value from the editor, the initial value, to be 0.2 now. And this 0.2 means slightly tilted to the right in this case. So what happens when we do not use the correct value type for a property? Let's check this out. Let's try to assign a string. This is wrong. Let's try to assign a string to this rotation property. We see the rotation property asks or is a property of type float. And now we try to assign a string value to it, which is a completely different value type. Let's see what we get. Cannot assign a value of type string, which is this, as float. So it is basically not possible to put a string into this rotation property, because this rotation property needs a floating point value, a floating point number, and not a string. And let's try a vector 2. Let's try this one. And we can see cannot assign a value of type vector 2 as float. Same thing, you know, Godot tells us, hey, please put a floating point value inside of this rotation. To reassign this value, please use floating point numbers. So you can only use the specified value type to reassign a property of the same value type. So the property's value type has to match what you actually put in right here. So that's why those value types are very important. Now let's check out another property. We also are going to look for the scale property. Now scale, reassign the scale property, and the scale property needs a vector 2. The default value is the gray text, vector 2, 1, 1 in this case. Now let's make it twice as big. Vector 2 we need. Now let's make it twice as big by using 2 and 2. And to be fair here, we see we need floating point numbers. But Godot it's okay for Godot if we write an int number, an integer, and it will convert it to float anyways in the background. But let's keep it real and precise and put in floating point numbers for this also. So this is a special case where Godot does not tell us that's the wrong value type, because it just converts in the background. But to be precise, this vector 2 type needs a floating point value, and floating point values are always with this point right here. Let's check out what happens. Now it's twice as big. Let's make it 4 times bigger. We even can only take the x component, and this way we can stretch it, but we don't want it in this case. So both values, x and y. So now it's really big, and in the bottom down right corner. So this is the scale property and how we can change it. We even can make it smaller. We can make it 0.5, for example, 0.5 to make it half the size, half the initial size or the original size. So now it's really tiny. Let's make it 4 times bigger for now. Then we can really see it. Check it out. Yeah, it's really bigger. Now the same for skew. We can check out what skew does again. We can reset the rotation and we can play around with the skew value, and we can see this is what the skew value does. So let's change it with code. Skew, I know that we have to write it because I can hover over it. Now this is the skew value. I need a k instead of a c, and it takes in a floating point value. So let's write it correctly, and let's check out also a small floating point value like 0.5, and we see it gets skewed. Let's make it 1.0, and we can see it gets skewed even more. So we will check for the visibility. So the visible property under the visibility category in the canvas item category, we can toggle this. This is a checkbox, and we can make the node visible or invisible by unchecking the checkbox. Let's do this with code. Let's check out. We need to write visible, and we need to set it equal, or we need to reassign it with a type bool. And if we are not sure how to do it, we can print it first. Visible, and print it out as we did yesterday, and we can check. Now the value we can put inside here is either true, or if we uncheck it and play again, or false. So if we want to overwrite it, we can either overwrite it with true or false. So let's set it to false and reset it right here. In the editor it is still visible, but at the start of the game it will disappear because we set the visible property to be false, which means the sprite is not visible from the start of the game because we have written it inside of the ready function and so on. So now let's check the modulate property. We need to write modulate, and the modulate property is of type color. We can check again what it does by just playing around with it in the editor. So we can basically change the color of this sprite. Now let's reset this, and we can look at how can we change this. So we need a type color, and the color type is specified like as we can see in the grayed out text. We need to write color and then some numbers and brackets. So let's check this out. Color, do the brackets, and we could write something like this right now, and it would be fine. This refers to white, but we also could just click on this little color rectangle, specify a color that we actually can see, like let's make this one. And the numbers get updated automatically. So really neat little feature for the color type. Let's see what is happening now. Ah, funny thing. We set the visible property to false, and therefore we cannot see our sprite right now. So we need to set it to true. Now we can actually see something, and we see that immediately at the beginning or start of the game, the hue of the sprite is now yellowish, because we did it right here in the code. So now I want to show you one more property that is really good to know. We did not encounter a string value type by now. I want to make this happen now. Therefore I have added the label and I'll add a script to it. Now we need to, this is our label, and to see something we write hello world, we write our text. Just bear with me and just watch. You can add a label settings object to this, or resource, how it is called in Godot. And this resource is here to make it easy so that we can change the size of the text and the color and such. But I just added it as a convenient way to change the font size now. This is how you can do it. Let's make it 50 so that you can actually see something. Let's drag this to the middle of the screen somewhat. And yeah, we set the default value to be hello world. We can check this out, write the ready function, ready. And we can print this out. Print. How do we know what to print? We need to print the text property of this label node. Lowercase text. Let's print it out. And we can see hello world. Let's change this text, add something to it, save, play. And you can see this is really the default value that we have specified in the editor right now. Let's delete this because this is ugly. And now we can change this property as we did with other properties too. It's just a string, a property of type string, as we can see when we hover right here. This property called text is of type string. So to replace this, to override this text value, we can write text, do our equal sign to override the property value, and this time we need a string. So the quotation marks, you may remember, and you write good morning. And now let's play and run the scene. So instead of using the default value at the beginning, at the start of the game, it gets immediately overwritten by our code snippet right here, by our line of code. We override the value to be good morning instead of hello world. This is how you can change text. So strings are good for text, and label is a UI node, a control or UI node to show text. So this is how you work with text basically. And now that's it for changing property values. So for your exercise, you are going to add a node, you are going to add a scene. You take the type node as root node for the scene. You add a sprite to the node. You add a label node. You save it just to the root directory, as we did every time by now. You add or attach a script to the sprite.d node, and before you start, you can or should quick load the icon texture so that you actually see something. You drag it into the middle, you play, see your sprite appears in the middle of the screen. Everything is working. Now we jump into code. You write the ready function, and then you start to use the new technique. We start with the position value, rotation, scale, skew. Then we go to visible property and modulate. And that's it for the sprite.d. So let's start. Position equals vector 2. And if you are unsure what to put inside of this property, you always can hover and see, watch out for the gray text, where you can see the default value, and this is a hint for what to put inside of this property. So now let's start this. just change it to something else, play it, see, yes, it has changed its position from the middle to the top left. Then let's change the rotation value. Rotation equals, this needs a floating point number. I use 0.6 now, and it's tilted to the right perfectly. So rotation works. And now we go for scale. This needs a vector 2 because this property is of type vector 2 and you only can override it with vector 2. Let's make it double the size and you can play and see, yes, it's actually bigger than before. Then you use the skew property. This needs a floating point value, I think. Yes, you can see it here in the tooltip. So let's do also 0.7 or something. And you can see it is skewed. So now go for visible. Visible, reassign the value by using the equal sign. And this is a Boolean value, so true and false is possible. Let's set it to false. See that it is away because visible, if we set the visibility to false, then the sprite disappears. Let's set it to true so we can see it again. Let's do one more, modulate, and it's of type color, so we need this. You can use the color picker to specify a color. Check it out. See, yes, it's actually working perfectly fine. And that's it for the sprite 2D. After you are finished with that and there are no errors and you saw the changes you did, you go for the label and attach a script to the label node. Now let's prepare the label. Going to do this. Drag it somewhere in the middle so that we can actually see it. You can place it somewhere right here. Write something like hello world or whatever you want. You can increase the font size by adding this label settings resource to it. Click on it, go to font, size and increase it. So now you can see it a little bit better. Hit play and you see hello world perfectly fine. And now we want to override this text property. Let's write func ready void, and now let's get the text property. We need to write text and it is of type string, so we put a string in it and you write something else. And now you see we started with hello world. We can see it in the editor. This is what we started with, and immediately at the start of the game, if we run the current scene, you will see that it is changed to good morning because we have overwritten the property with code. As a bonus task, you could search for the transform section of the control node. It is organized a little bit different inside of control nodes, so you have to look for it under the layout section. And then you can find the transform section. And you could print or change those values too if you want, but you do not need to. So this is what you are going to do. And if you are done with it, you can just delete everything. You can close it, you can remove it. Here, write down here, delete it, and you can start fresh again. Do the same thing again. And I would recommend you to do it for 10 minutes, take a break, and again 10 minutes. And you even can do the exercises from the last videos too. So start to figure out your own little training plan. I give you the exercises and you need to work on things that you feel weak so that you get strong and that you get better with it. So yeah, as always, repetition is key. You should really repeat yourself. Don't overthink. There is a lot of theory behind all of that, and there are a lot of difficult words I could throw around, but we focus on tiny little tasks and just practice them, because at the end you have to get into the habit of actually writing code and doing stuff. And that's what we are going to do here in this series. So have fun, don't rush it, and see you in the next one.